Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. We are breaking with convention. I'm Amy Goodman. A warning to our audience. The following stories contain graphic footage of violence. In Kenosha, Wisconsin, gunmen opened fire on a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters late Tuesday, killing 2 people, injuring a third.
Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
Video filmed by a bystander shows a young man with an assault rifle being followed by a crowd of protesters. He falls to the ground before shooting into the crowd as protesters attempt to disarm him. Kenosha police said early Wednesday morning armed vigilantes, they called them militias, have been in the streets and they're looking for a man with a long gun. That's a white man with a long gun. No arrests have been made yet, and those killed have not been identified. The violence came on the 3rd night of unrest in Kenosha following the police shooting on Sunday of Jacob Blake, an unarmed 29-year-old black man. An officer shot Blake 7 times in the back as he was getting into his car. His 3 young children witnessed the shooting. Blake was reportedly trying to break up a fight between 2 women before the shooting, but the police have not explained why they went after him at all. He remains hospitalized in serious but stable condition. His lawyers said Tuesday he's paralyzed from the waist down.
He had a bullet go through some or all of his spinal cord, at least 1 bullet. He has holes in his stomach. He had to have nearly his entire colon and small intestines removed. He suffered damage to his kidney and liver and was also shot in the arm.
Members of Jacob Blake's family spoke publicly Tuesday for the first time since the police shooting on the weekend, calling for the firing and arrest of the officers responsible. And they called for more peaceful protests. This is Jacob Blake's sister, LaTetra Widman.
This is nothing new. I'm not sad. I'm not sorry. I'm angry. And I'm tired. I haven't cried one time. I stopped crying years ago. I am numb. I have been watching police murder people that look like me for years.
After headlines, we'll get the latest from Wisconsin and speak with Mandela Barnes, Wisconsin's first African-American lieutenant governor. In Pennsylvania, dozens of Black Lives Matter protesters on a march from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Washington, D.C. were shot at by a white resident Monday night as they walked through a residential neighborhood in Bedford County, east of Pittsburgh. One protester was injured by the gunfire and treated at a local hospital. In Louisville, Kentucky, police arrested 68 people Tuesday as they protested nonviolently to demand the arrest of the officers who killed Breonna Taylor, the 26-year-old African-American EMT who was killed by police in her own home in March. The Trump administration is facing accusations it's broken the law by using the powers of the federal government to aid the president's re-election campaign. During the 2nd night of the Republican National Convention, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressed the convention while on a work trip in Israel in an apparent violation of the Hatch Act, which prohibits federal employees from participating in political activities. House Democrats are now investigating. 2 parts of Tuesday's convention were filmed inside the White House. Trump pardoned a convicted bank robber who went on to start a nonprofit to help formerly incarcerated people reintegrate into society. Trump, along with acting Homeland Security Director Chad Wolf, held a naturalization ceremony inside the White House for 5 immigrants from Bolivia, Lebanon, India, Sudan, and Ghana. The evening ended with a speech by First Lady Melania Trump in the White House Rose Garden.
Just like me, I know many of you watch how mean and manipulative social media can be. And just like me, I'm sure many of you are looking for answers how to talk to your children about the downside of technology and their relationships with their peers.
Melania Trump spoke in front of a live audience. It looked like several hundred in the Rose Garden, where the vast majority of the attendees, including President Trump and Mike Pence, did not wear masks. CNN reports many attendees were not tested for coronavirus prior to the event. Meanwhile, Republicans canceled one scheduled speaker Tuesday night, Marianne Mendoza, after she promoted an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on Twitter just hours before her scheduled speech. We'll have more on this later in the broadcast. The United States reported 1,147 coronavirus deaths on Tuesday, with over 37,000 new confirmed cases. Many of the latest outbreaks have come in schools and on college campuses as students return for fall classes. In Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama reported more than 560 coronavirus cases. University of Missouri confirmed nearly 160 cases on its first day of classes. This week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention quietly altered its COVID-19 testing recommendations, saying people without symptoms should not be tested for coronavirus, even if they've been in close contact with an infected person. The CDC's new advice drew alarm from public health officials who say the recommendation could accelerate the spread of the disease. Meanwhile, in Boise, Idaho, armed demonstrators shoved their way past state troopers in the state capitol Tuesday and into the gallery overlooking the House floor to protest public health measures. 4 people were arrested, including far-right militia leader Ammon Bundy, who led an armed occupation of an Oregon wildlife refuge in 2016. In international news, Argentina reported a daily record of over 8,700 new coronavirus cases and 381 deaths Monday. In Europe, France confirmed a spike of nearly 4,900 new coronavirus cases Monday, the country's highest single-day figure since the beginning of the pandemic. Several other European countries, including Spain, Italy, and Germany, have also had a rise in new COVID cases after reopening. In the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Laura strengthened rapidly overnight. It projected to become a dangerous Category 4 storm ahead of its projected landfall early Thursday near the border of Texas and Louisiana. Over 500,000 people have been told to evacuate the region. The storm brought torrential rain and flooding to Haiti, where the death toll rose to at least 21. At least 3 deaths were reported in the Dominican Republic. In Cuba, over 300,000 people were evacuated, but no deaths were reported. Israel launched airstrikes on southern Lebanon overnight, saying the assault was retaliation for shots fired by Hezbollah into Israel. No Israeli soldiers were injured in the alleged border incursion by Hezbollah, but residents of the Lebanese border town of Hula reported their homes were damaged by an intense Israeli bombardment.
First, they lit up incendiary flares. Then they started with white phosphorus lights. Then it was something like cluster bombs that exploded when they hit the ground, and then it was all over. It was unbelievable how much they struck. We almost suffocated from the smoke.
Israel's assault on southern Lebanon followed 16 straight days of attacks on the Gaza Strip, where Palestinian militants have launched incendiary balloons into southern Israel. In health news, Africa has been declared free from wild polio, as over 95% of the continent's population has been vaccinated after a decades-long immunization campaign. A quarter of a century ago, the waterborne disease left tens of thousands of children across Africa paralyzed each year. Since then, billions of oral polio vaccines have been provided across the continent. Wild polio is now found only in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and health experts say eliminating it there would permanently eradicate polio. In Belarus, 2 opposition leaders were arrested Tuesday and ordered jailed for 10 days as President Alexander Lukashenko continues to violently crack down on anti-government protesters. Massive mobilizations have gone on for over 2 weeks after the longtime authoritarian leader was declared the winner of an election opponents say was rigged. On Tuesday, thousands of school teachers gathered outside Belarus's Ministry of Education, protesting against a threat by Lukashenko to fire school teachers who don't support the government.
Teachers must not be afraid to teach, to bring up children. Their voice must be heard now. Even if they have their own opinion, they can still do their job. They must not get fired for this. The teachers should stop being the sheep who obey orders without asking.
And And a federal judge in Washington, D.C. has struck down a Trump administration rule that made it harder for non-citizen military members to apply for U.S. citizenship. Under Trump's requirements, non-citizen soldiers had to serve for at least 180 days on active duty or 1 year in the reserves to qualify for a certificate needed to apply for naturalization. The requirements were enacted in 2017, triggering a 70% drop in applications from service members. The successful court challenge was spearheaded by 8 service members with deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, and long-time permanent residency. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. We are breaking with convention. I am Amy Goodman in New York, joined by my co-host Juan Gonzalez in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.